Hey everyone, Night Horror here with Tabbed Out Gaming, where our motto is in-game for everyone. Whether you're a casual player or a hardcore raider who just made the switch to ESO, we're here to help. And today what we're going to talk about is specific gear sets and what you should be wearing as a tank. Now, if you're more interested in a meta-analysis and in learning how to make gear choices for yourself, I have done a video on that and I'll link it below. But today we're going to be talking about a specific sets and I'm going to be giving you specific advice on what you should be wearing. This video is geared towards new to intermediate players, and what I mean by that, if you're a new player who hasn't even reached CP 160 yet, but you'd like to know what sets you want to get into Endgame, or you think you might, I'm going to tell you what sets you want to keep an eye out for, and what sets you can go farm, so that when you do get to that point, you will have the gear that you need, or once you get there, you're not left going, okay, I'm CP 160, what do I do from here? And if you're an intermediate player, and what I mean by that is if you've ran maybe a couple of vet trials, or you just want to get into vet trials, or maybe you've been running vet trials for a long time, but you don't know anything about optimization in group setups and what gear you should be wearing to best help the rest of your group, then this is the right video for you. I'm going to give you those sets. Let's just start off by answering the most basic question that I think everyone has. And that is, if I'm only going to have one set of gear that I'm currently wearing on my tank, 2 5-piece sets and a monster set, what should those be? And the answer to that is very simply Claw of Jaundican, which drops from Sunspire, Powerful Assault, which is a PvP set, and I think currently right now the Frost Staff is on sale for the low price of 1.5 million. That will probably go up to 2 million in the near future because we just had a PvP event. And then the third set you need is the monster set, and that is Encratis Behemoth, and that drops from Black Drake Villa. So if you're only going to have one set on your tank at any given time, that's what it should be. And if that's all you're looking for, feel free to stop the video here. That's all you need to know. Now, for those who are looking for a little bit more, there's a couple other sets that I would recommend because generally in any kind of trial, you're going to have another tank there. So you can't both be wearing Claw of Jaundican and Powerful Assault because those buffs will not stack with each other. So it's not really helpful. So in that case, the second tank needs to be wearing something else. So that begs the question, what should you be wearing or what should they be wearing? Now, the answer to that I would say is Saxolyl, which drops from the new trial, Rock Grove, and then a sustain set. So if you're in a mag composition group, you want Wormsraiments. If you're in a stamina composition group, you want Hirsines. And if you're in some combination, then you probably want Stone Talker. Now, again, you want to make sure that somebody else is not wearing one of those sets because they will not overlap. So again, Jaundican, Powerful Assault, Saxolyl, and then a sustain set, one of Worms, Hirsines, or Stone Talker. And then for the Monster Helm, again, Encratis, one of the tanks you really wanted to be wearing Encratis. And then the second set is really up to you. Something like Bloodspawn would be fine. Tremor Scale if you're in a stamina group. Or you could use Engine Guardian, Symphony of Blades, Sentinel, all those are fine. Doesn't really matter that much after that. There's not really a go-to second Monster Helm that you necessarily want to be wearing. I personally wear Bloodspawn. Now I run a Necromancer tank, and so being able to Necro-Res more often for a progression group, if they're new and people are dying a lot, can be a huge deal, can be pretty important. So Bloodspawn is what I would go with there. Now that we've gone over the kind of the Cliff Notes version, let's go ahead and talk about each one of these sets, why you want to use it, what's good about it, etc. So first up here is Claw of Jaundican. Now this is a set pretty much all main tanks use. It makes the most sense on a main tank. The 3-piece bonus here is significant. This is most tanking sets in trials will give you minor Aegis, which will reduce your damage taken by 5%. It's awesome. Great to have a damage reduction there. Nothing else really needs to be said about it. And then the 5-piece bonus, which is the reason you want to wear this set. Really, when you taunt an enemy, you give yourself and 11 group members minor courage for 15 seconds, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 215. Now, this is the only way to get minor courage. And so that's why you want to have this set, and you always want to have it in a group. You can get major courage from a couple different sources. Generally, healers will be doing that. So minor courage is what you'll be providing to the group. It's kind of a bummer. They get major courage, they can give to the group, and you can only give minor courage. The thing about this is it lasts for 15 seconds. Your taunts last for 15 seconds. So all you have to do while wearing this set is keep taunt on the boss. That's really it, or on the ads. And there's really nothing else to it. Now with this set, and generally with all sets that don't provide a range, it's the same as like Warhorn and a few of those other things, and it's like 30 meters. It's really long, but if you are on like the other side of the map from your group, they could be out of range. But in general, if they're anywhere near you, you will be providing this buff to them. And again, you don't really have to worry about anything else. You just taunt like normal. As long as you're the main tank, you're going to be taunting constantly anyways, because you'll always have something to do. If you're the off tank, it's not always ideal because sometimes you won't have ads up and other things. You won't have anything to taunt. So you'll generally want to wear this on the main tank if you're in a trial. And if you're in a dungeon, again, no reason not to wear this. And again, it's a unique buff, only place you can get it, so you might as well, so you want to have it in the group. Now, Powerful Assault. Now, this set, besides the fact that it's extremely expensive, is a really nice set. It provides 307 weapon and spell damage for 10 seconds to the group. Now, you have to proc this with an Assault ability. Generally, the thing you want to use, and the thing that makes the most sense, is Vigor. Either morph is fine, and just keep in mind that I think Vigor has like an 8-yard range, so I kind of use that as a guide. This is actually, or an 8-meter range rather, and this is 10 meters, so it is a little bit bigger than that. Now, there are add-ons that you can use for this. If you're on PC, I highly recommend that you use an add-on, and the add-on that I use is Buff the Group. I just really like it. It's fairly transparent. I just like the way it's set up. It's very easy to see when it's buffed and when it's procced and who it's procced on. And that will let you know which group members in your group actually have it and when you're keeping it up. So you can kind of keep an eye on it out of the corner of your peripheral, and you'll see that when the timer is getting low and you know that it's only 10 seconds, so you'll know when you need to proc it again. Now, Powerful Assault is a medium armor set, and it's important to keep that in mind. So you do want it on jewelry and weapons if you can. Now, the reason that the Frost Staff is ridiculously expensive. 1.5 million right now on PCNA, and could easily be higher than that. So keep that in mind. A lot of times the off tank will be wearing Powerful Assault, and one of the reasons for that is because they'll actually not be using weapons. They'll use jewelry and like 2-piece medium, since they're not taking as much damage as the main tank. And that makes a lot of sense, and that's another way you can say, because the body pieces are fairly cheap, and so are the jewelry. They shouldn't be crazy expensive. Sometimes people put them up for like 50K or something like that. Don't buy that. Don't buy anything like that. You should get it for fairly cheap, 20K like at the most, and that's for like a good piece. In general, though, pretty cheap. Just shop around, and that's why the off tank will have that. And other than that, there's really nothing else to say about Powerful Assault. Keep it procced as much as you can, and it's a great set for for dungeons as well. So you can still, in dungeons you don't quite take as much damage, and having 2 medium pieces is not going to be the end all be all. So as long as you've got Jaundican, you can still rock Powerful Assault and you'll be just fine. Now, if you saw my video on Bloodlord's Embrace, these are 2 sets you can actually use together, since both of them proc if you were worried about magic recovery. This is super helpful if you're on a necro or if you're just trying to keep a lot of buffs up and you're tanking. So in 4-mans, you could front bar Jaundican, back bar Powerful Assault, and still have Bloodlords on with a one-piece training set. And you get the best of both worlds. You get to proc both sets. So as long as you keep Vigor on your back bar with your Powerful Assault, where that's a 5-piece set, then you can rock Bloodlords with it as well. So just an option, just so you know. And then Saxolyl. Now, this set is best ran on a Necromancer because you can essentially Warhorn for potentially up to 30 seconds, as well as Colossus. And that can be really nice, especially, again, in 4-mans whenever you're running dungeons, but also very much in trials as well. So you can generate quite a bit of ultimate as a Necromancer. If you're off-tanking and you have Saxolyl with Powerful Assault, for example, you can keep up Powerful Assault and then try and generate as much ultimate as you can so that you can Colo and give a Warhorn. So it just helps you move through trash pools a little bit faster and a little bit easier, especially with the new trials, the newest trials, actually, all of them. The ad pools can be challenging, and they can be one of the most challenging parts of the trial. And so being able to use your ultimates more often is definitely useful. The other thing you could do if you're struggling and you're progressing through something, even if you're not on a Necromancer, you can still use Barrier and get the benefits of a Warhorn. So that's cool. So if you're on a DK, for example, all you can do is Warhorn for as far as group buffs with your ultimate. But if you're wearing Saxolyl, then you can actually give the equivalent of a Warhorn, because really the bonus you're going for is the extra crit damage from the major force. And so you can use that while also providing the party with a huge damage shield from Barrier. And again, this is a trial set, so it provides that minor Aegis as well. And this is a heavy armor set. I don't know if I mentioned that. So Jaundican and Saxolyl, both heavy armor sets, so you can wear those on your body. Powerful Assault, you want on your jewelry. And then these other pieces here. So Wormsraiments. Now, I'll go ahead and put Worms and Hercines up here together, and you can see that they basically do the exact same thing. One is for stamina and one is for magicka. So if you have a group that is all magicka, you want to wear Worms. If you have a group that is all stamina, you'll want to wear Hercines. And if you have a mixed group, then you could rock Stone Talker. Now, again, you probably want to wear this by yourself. You don't have the healers wear something else. They have other options in general if they have those sets, but Stone Talker is another thing you could wear for a sustained set. Now, for super optimized groups and people with a lot of experience, you won't necessarily need the sustain, and that's why it's like, okay, well, what should I wear here? But if you have a group, if you have anybody ever running out of magicka or stamina while they're trying to use abilities, it is better to have a sustain set because their DPS is going to fall off a cliff whenever they run out of magicka or stamina. They're just not going to be able to cast anything. They're going to start having a heavy attack, and their DPS is going to go down significantly. And if they're having to do it once, the chances are they're having to do it a lot. So being able to provide a sustain set will increase group DPS. So we're still talking about tier 1 things that increase DPS for the entire party. Now, other options, if you do not have one of these, if you don't have a sustain state yet, if you have Arcasis or Drake's Rush, that can be the 4th 5-piece set that you have on one of your tanks in a trial, or really anything will do. Galamway, there's plenty of other options. All of them don't increase DPS that much, don't really work that great, and so it's kind of whatever at that point, if we're talking about tier 1 sets that increase DPS. Now, just as a quick reminder, we are going to be talking about tiers, and tier 1 sets are sets that increase DPS and should be worn every time you can, as long as you're not dying. Tier 2 sets are sets that increase sustain for the group, and primarily what I mean by that is the DPS. The tanks and healers should be able to sustain on their own, ideally. And then Tier 3 sets are survivability sets, both for you and for the party. Obviously, if the tank is dying, it's going to cause the party to die. In general, you can get lucky, but that's generally what happens. And so you want to wear those kind of as a last resort, but you want to wear them if you're dying. If you're new to some content, if you're still learning, whatever the case may be, then you'll want to wear tier 3 sets. And I cover those tiers more in depth in the other video, so I'm not going to restate anything more here. And that is really going to be it for our 4-piece sets, okay? I've given you 3 different sustain sets you might want to wear. You can kind of pick one of them. I would just do Stone Talkers if you just want one. All you got to do is heavy attack to proc it. You're going to be doing that to get resources back anyways. Yolnahkriin, Powerful Assault, and Saxolyl. So now let's talk about something that you don't have to do in 4-mans that you might want to consider doing in trials, and you could honestly consider doing in 4-mans, but and that is going to be wearing different sets for trash. Now this is very common in veteran and especially hard mode groups. Pretty much any hard mode group, you really want to be, that's kind of getting into the territory where like you need separate sets for trash. And so it's good to get into that early. And I know that like switching gear midway through a trial multiple times just for trash probably seems like some really try hard stuff. Like it's really people that are, super into the game and maybe doesn't seem like it's for casuals. But the reason I want you guys to know this is and I want to tell you about it is because it can help you clear content quicker. And if you're on a PC, there's a couple of add-ons you can get and it'll change your gear for you once you get it set up, and it's super quickly. It's like one hit of a button, and it can make the ad pools go a lot easier. And in the newer trials, some of the ad pools can be difficult, especially if you're new. Rockgrove, man, they are hard, and all of them have been hard for us at different times, okay? So even if someone's like, oh, Sunspire, those ad pools are easy, it's not a big deal, take it with a grain of salt, okay? It was hard for all of us at some point. It's still hard for me sometimes. Keep that in mind. So the sets that you want to consider using are Frozen Watcher, and this one, I want to put a huge asterisk by this. This is a great set to have for ad pools, and this is a heavy armor set, and what it does is when you block, it creates a blizzard around you within 6 meters, which is a decent size, and the reason that you want it is it's going to apply brittle to enemies. So all you have to do, once you've taunted the enemies, you've got them in the group, hold block, and Frozen Watcher will apply Minor Brittle to all of them. Now, what Minor Brittle does, it increases your critical damage by 10%, and your DPS should be running anywhere from like low 60% to low 80% critical rating. So somewhere in that range, depends on the patch, depends on their setup, but in general, 75% is easy to expect of the damage is going to be a critical damage, and you're increasing that by 10%. So it's a huge damage increase on all of the trash and can help you kill those mobs quicker. I don't know if I noted, this is a heavy armor set, so you can switch this out. And this set you can get from 4-mans, I believe it's Depths of Malatar. So you can run it on normal, just get the body. It is a heavy set if you want, and then you can use that for your trash setup. Now the other set you're going to be wearing for trash is going to change very soon. So right now it's Alkas, and I don't want to say too much about this because in like 5 weeks, I think Alkas is going to go away for tanks, and I think it's going to be replaced with something else, but I will talk about it here briefly. So the reason you want Alkas is because you want to reduce the resistances of the enemies further. So every 660 resistances that you reduce your opponent, you're increasing their damage taken by 1%. So that's why we want to use our Sword and Board taunt, because that's going to be like a 13.5% damage increase by using that Sword and Board taunt on the enemies as opposed to just a range taunt. However, enemies will have about a little over 18,000 in veteran trials. You'll have a little bit over 18,000 resistances on the enemies, and so you want to reduce that down to 0 is your goal. And without going too much into the math of it and all the details or whatever, you need something else, and you can do it with your Crusher enchant, but that's only going to apply to one target, and so you need something in AoE on trash packs. So Crusher works great on a boss, keeping it on the boss if you're on a boss fight. However, on ads, you need something else. So Roar of Alkas will do it. And again, it's going to depend on the patch and what the resistances are at, and a lot of different factors. Individual classes will have some things that will give them more or less resistances. Your light armor skill will give you more or less resistances. So that's all DPS stuff. That's kind of more of a raid composition concern. But for you on trash, wearing Roar of Alkas is a good idea. It will increase the damage done to the ads and will make them die more quickly. Now, having said that, the next update, Crimson Oath's Rive is going to be out. So this is a new set, and it's going to work similarly to Alkas, and then it's going to provide a debuff to the enemies, reducing their armor. However, it's going to work a lot better and a lot easier, okay? So what it does is whenever you apply a major or minor buff to yourself or an ally, which is going to be all the time, okay? You're constantly doing that. You couldn't do it if you tried. If you tried not to, and you have the skills that should be on your bar, you're just not going to be able to, okay? A million skills, other abilities, other armor sets, it's going to proc all the time, okay? So the main thing is that you want to get everybody grouped together before you proc this set, and that way you get the whole group. Now it is 12 meters, so it's a pretty huge radius, so they really don't have to be that close. I think the main thing is when you first go to pull an ad, and I'll have to test this out myself, but I think the main thing is going to be when you go to range taunt, when you're running in and you range taunt one of the ads, you don't want to be so close that it procs immediately, because you might not get everybody in that first proc. So probably when you range taunt for the first time, you want to be far enough away that it doesn't apply it. But then after that, you should be fine. Everybody should be grouped together well enough, and that will reduce the resistances. Assuming you're not already over a pin cap, so you haven't already reduced the enemy's resistances down to 0, this set is going to provide about a 5% increase in damage. Okay, so it is significant, so keep that in mind. So one of your tanks will be wearing Crimson Oath's Rive, and the other tank will be wearing Frozen Watcher to provide that minor brittle. And then, of course, your main tank will still be wearing Jaundican, and your off tank should probably be wearing Powerful Assault as well. So keep that in mind. So then you'll want those 4 sets: Jaundican, Crimson Oath, Powerful Assault, and Frozen Watcher. Now, Frozen Watcher is a heavy set, so they could replace that with Saxolyl. So Saxolyl and Frozen Watcher could be the 2 that you switch out there. It's kind of up to you, but that's what I would recommend. And if you're still like Night Haro, I'm just not convinced, I don't want to be switching sets in the middle of a trial, I get it. Do Veteran Rock Grove a couple of times, and I promise you will want these sets for trash. Okay, so take my word for it. But again, I totally get the idea of like, man, I don't want to go out. I don't want to have to get 6 sets or whatever. I totally understand that mentality. Don't stress it. You don't need this for every trial. You don't even need it for Veteran Rock Grove. But it's just something to keep in mind. Just to kind of talk about this a little bit. The reason that you want to do all this is because running trials or 4-mans, it's a team sport. And so you really have to look at like, what am I bringing to the team? How am I helping out? The healer should be wearing sets that help the DPS, and you should be wearing sets that help DPS, because that's how you get through content. And then the DPS should be working on the rotation, wearing the proper sets so that they're maxed out on their DPS, and that's how they're helping the team. Okay, so everybody's working together towards a common goal, and this is just kind of how it works out with your responsibility in ESO while tanking. It's not just about standing there and not dying. If that's what you're interested in, there's a lot of videos out there. I don't think that's how it should be played. It seems like a very selfish game. It's kind of like, playing on a team and expecting everybody else to do everything for you and to just do the minimum. And besides the fact that that seems like a jerk move, it also seems very not fun to me. I want to be part of the team. I want to be part of the team's success, so that when we say, hey, we did this, we cleared this content, that I feel good about how I contributed, and that, yes, I was part of that team success, and I wasn't a drain, and they didn't just carry me through it, which is what I think most people want, but just want to say it here. Now, if you're wondering what add-on I use Alpha Gear. I think it works really well. You can set up your bars as well as your gear, and it also has an accompanying thing where it'll pull gear in and out of your bank for you. so you can kind of save space by only having one set of tanking gear. So I have a tank of every single class. So what is that, like 5 or 6, 7? I don't know. I have one of all of them. I don't use like 3 or 4 of them at all, or hardly at all, but I have them, and I only have one set of gear. And so I put it in and out of my bank whenever I am logging on and off a character, depending on what I need to bring to the raid. And so Alpha Gear does that really well. It's a great add-on. I highly recommend it. And I am going to be doing an add-on video sometime in the near future. So keep that in mind if you're just curious about more of add-ons that are useful and that you can use as a tank. Although there are probably some videos already out there if you need something right now. Now, I do want to mention one more set here that so that no one thinks that I accidentally forgot it. It's a set that oftentimes is recommended for trash, and I will tell you why I don't think it's the best set ever, and that is Dragons Defilement. So what this set does is it applies Minor Breach in an AoE around you. So whenever you take damage from a melee attack, you gain a corrupting aura for 5 seconds that applies Minor Breach to all enemies near you, reducing their physical and spell resistance. And this effect can occur once every 5 seconds. So in theory, it should be up pretty much all the time. Now, my issue with this set is that when you go into an ad pool, there will often be smaller groups of ads, right? They'll be, and they're literally smaller. Okay, the small ads. Now, there's oftentimes too many of those to really worry about. So you're really grabbing the major ad, and there can be anywhere between 4 to like 6 of them usually. So each tank gets anywhere from 2 to 3, and then you chain in and CC the smaller ads as you can. Now, when you're taunting these larger ads, you need to apply Major Breach to them. And if you stab them with your sword and board bar, you're also applying Minor Breach. So I really don't see the usefulness of this set so much. The smaller ads are going to die quickly anyways, and they're not really going to be killing anybody. They don't do enough damage. There's not that much to them. So trying to kill them a little bit more quickly, they're going to die before the major ads, the larger ads anyways. And so I just don't see the use in using a 5-piece set to reduce their resistances a little bit when they're going to die so quickly and they're not really a threat anyways. So that's just how I feel about this set. It might save you a global cooldown. So instead of having to, when you range taunt somebody, getting up there and stabbing them again, you could cast some other ability to increase group DPS. Again, it's a 5-piece set. I would prefer to use Jaundican, Powerful Assault, Frozen Watcher, and then Alkas, or hopefully Crimson Oath when that comes out. So that's just what I prefer and why I don't use Dragons Defilement, but I just want to mention it here to say this is a thing and people will recommend it, and to explain why I don't think it's necessary. Not saying it's a bad set, I'm just saying that I don't think it's really necessary, and I think there are better options. All right, so having said that, we've talked about our Tier 1 DPS increasing sets. We've talked about our Tier 2 5-piece sustain increasing sets. Now let's go ahead and talk about, still sticking with the theme of 5 pieces here, let's talk about survivability sets. And there are 2 main ones that I want to mention here that can be extremely useful. And the first up is Ebon Armoury. And this set here increases the maximum health of you and up to 11 group members. So the entire trial, if they're within 28 meters of you. And 28 meters, I think I said earlier 30 meters, but I think it's 28 is the radius of Warhorn and Jaundican and other things that don't when they don't give you a range, often it's 28 meters is how far it'll work out to. What this set does is it increases the maximum health of you and everybody in your trial group by 1,000. Now, this is good for progression groups because it can just help. However, the usefulness of this set has gone down in recent history because now instead of using like parse food, like what most people will do, which provides no health, you can use Witch Mothers or Dubious Cameron Throne or something, and you'll get easily, 22k health using that food. And so an extra 1,000 when you can swap your food and get like 3,000 health, getting an extra 1,000 from a 5-piece set just isn't as big of a deal in my opinion. But a lot of people still like it. A lot of people still recommend it and they want to use it in their progression groups. And so it might be a set that you're asked to have. So I do recommend you go farm this and get it. It is a heavy armor set, so you can body it. And then the other set here is Banny's Torment. So this set is really interesting and has really gained popularity because of Veteran Rockgrove. On the second boss, both tanks just take a ton of damage. And so by using this set, you can apply Major Maim to the enemy, reducing their damage done by 10%, and also gain Major Vitality, increasing your healing received by 16%. So you're taking a lot of damage and you're having to be constantly healed in that fight. And so having this on as your second set can really help. And so this might be a set that if you're working on Veteran Rockgrove, you go get this set just for that. So I know that's pretty niche, but it's a big enough help in that one situation, and it's a newer trial, so I wanted to mention it. There are other sets that I know are helpful and useful in certain trials, but this is the one I wanted to point out. And if you ever need a selfish set, this can do the trick. This can help you. You should always, in general, as a tank, we always want one selfish set at least. And the reason for that is because you might be progging something and you might be dying over and over again. And at some point, it sucks for you. You're frustrated. Also, the group, they don't want to be there dying either. Hopefully, they're very patient and supportive. But still, at some point, you're like, hey, man, can we just get through this? Sometimes your DPS is enough that you don't need to be wearing all those, certain sets. And so they can say, hey, just, sacrifice, wear whatever you need to. Don't help out the DPS right now. You can best help us out by not dying. And to do that, you're going to put on, some other set. Now, sets you can put on, Plague Doctor is a good set. It just gives you a bunch of health. So it helps all your health-based heals and keeps you from dying, gives the healers more time to heal you. Leeching, Crimson, those sets both heal you just by kind of doing what they do. Eternal Warrior also provides a major heal, and there's a ton of other sets. But you always want to have one of them. I mean, there's so many that I don't want to list them here. Warrior Poet, and again, the list could go on and on. So pick one or two selfish set. Banny's Torment is a good one. Plague Doctor is a good one. Any one of these sets. And a lot of these sets here too, I should point out, you have to farm Eben. You have to farm Banny's Torment. Plague Doctor though, Warrior Poet, you can just go buy those sets off of a vendor and they're going to be pretty cheap. You shouldn't have to pay very much for them at all, just because they drop overland and they're very easy to get. And that is it for the 5P sets that we're going to talk about today. Now let's go ahead and move on and talk about a few more monster sets. So we already talked about Encratis, we talked about Bloodspawn, now Tremor Scale. Tremor Scale is a set that you'll want to use whenever you have a stam composition group. And the reason for that is because currently, at least as of this latest patch, stamina, and so this is something that will certainly change in the future. And so it's rough making these videos because stuff is going to change in the future. But what it will do, it will reduce the physical resistances of enemies. Okay, so whenever you activate a taunt ability on an enemy, you cause a Doom Ripper to burst out of the ground beneath you after 1 second, dealing some amount of physical damage to all enemies within 4 meters and reducing their physical resistance by 2,400 for 8 seconds. And this can occur once every 8 seconds. So since stamina DPS generally have less penetration, if you have a stamina composition group, then you'll want your other tank to be wearing Tremor Scale. So one wearing Encratis and the other one wearing Tremor Scale. So keep that in mind. And probably your main tank wearing Tremor Scale and your off tank wearing Encratis in that situation, because you have to taunt to proc this monster set. Now moving on to sustain sets for our monster set here. So we have Symphony of Blades, Engine Guardian, and Sentinel. Now, Symphony of Blades is generally going to be covered by the healers. They're going to be taking care of that, but you could wear it as a tank in certain situations where the healers need to be wearing something else, and that's why I mention it here. I think this is most useful for Warden tanks. Now, Engine Guardian. So this set, when you use an ability, you have a 25% chance to summon a Dwemer Automaton to restore some amount of stamina, magicka, or health every 0.5 seconds for 6 seconds. This can occur once every 10 seconds. So Engine Guardian and Sentinel here. I recommend Engine Guardian. I think that probably works the best. But both these sets, the whole point of them is to help you with your sustain. It's not really to help other people. You wear these sets whenever you're having problems running out of stamina or magicka, and that's causing you to die, which, according to statistics, is the leading cause of death of tanks in ESO today. So see your doctor about sustain and ask him if Engine Guardian is right for you. Now, the reason you're going to be wearing these sets is to keep yourself alive. So it's one way of kind of going quote unquote selfish without actually having to change out one of your 5P sets. So start by putting on Engine Guardian, or you can use Sentinel. I think Engine Guardian is a little bit better, but these things change over time, so you never know. You could put on one of these sets again instead of swapping out one of your 5P sets. And that's really all that needs to be said about these sets. Now, Vicosa. Now, this is an interesting set. When you bash an enemy you've taunted, you frighten them, applying major cowardice, reducing their weapon and spell damage by 430 for 8 seconds. This effect can occur once every 15 seconds. So this is interesting on fights where you or somebody or the group are taking a lot of damage. This is a cool way of proccing this and reducing the damage taken for the group, helping their survivability as well as your own. The only bummer about this set is that it's only going to be up about 50% of the time at best. So it's kind of like, Starfall or some other time when the damage is coming. Maybe it would be best then, but it's situational and it's only going to be available about half the time. And so that kind of takes away from the usefulness of it, but is a great set to have, especially for fights where you're just going to be taking a ton of damage as a tank. So again, Rock Grove or Kyne's Aegis, the last boss, those are the kind of places where you might want something something like this. Lady Thorn. Casting an ability that costs health spawns a blood ball for 10 seconds. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. You or an ally near the blood ball can activate the Sanguine Burst synergy, dealing some amount of disease damage to nearby enemies and applying major maim for 8 seconds, decreasing their damage done by 10%. Enemies can only receive major maim from Sanguine Burst once every 20 seconds. Damage scales off the activator synergy's max health. So this will do more damage for a tank than it will for a DPS. Now, this issue with this is the same as Vicosa. Maximum uptime is going to be 50%. Major maim is very nice. However, and you are getting it on a 2-piece set. However, again, it's only going to be up half the time. Is it going to be the time when you need? It's one way of reducing your damage taken in general, and that's nothing to scoff at. But just keep in mind that even in the best situation, you're only going to get 50% uptime. And what you'll have to use to proc this is Blood Altar, which of course costs health. So maybe best on an off tank to be able to be proccing this for the main tank. Now, Earthcore. Now, this set is mainly used in Veteran Cloud Rest, and you can use it both in the portals and on Zamaja during Execute. It provides you with a fair amount of heal over time. Now, this has been nerfed and nerfed again, and I think nerfed again, okay? So it's been nerfed several times. Now it no longer scales off your max health. It scales off your max magic or stamina, and it's also had the healing reduced several times. So a lot of people are using Troll King instead, but I have still used this, and it does still work in Veteran Cloud Rest. And it's just one way of getting yourself healed out of Baneful since you do have such a large healing debuff. If you want to know more information about that, I do have a video on how to tank like basics, Veteran Cloud Rest +0. It's primarily done as a Necromancer video because it's hardest to do it on a Necromancer, but it might be helpful for you. You could check it out. Now, the second to last here is Lord Warden. And what this one does, you have whenever you take damage, you have the 50% chance to summon a Shadow Orb for 10 seconds. This increases your physical and spell resistance for you and your group members within 8 meters of you by 3,100. So I like this set if you're trying to reduce the damage taken for the party. And the reason I like it is because it can be up pretty much all the time. And it provides, that's equivalent of like a 5% damage debuff to the party if you're not already at resistance cap. So it's a 5% reduced damage for both yourself and the party. Again, you might be over resistance cap with this depending on what your setup is, but that's still really nice to have. And again, you can help the rest of the party to not die. And DPS do a lot more damage when they're not dead. That's a pro tip there. So if you tell other people that, make sure you attribute it. Okay, and then Troll King that I just mentioned before. So what this does is whenever you heal yourself or an ally and they're below 50% health, so you can do this for yourself whenever you're casting yourself heals, you increase your health recovery by almost 1,000 for 10 seconds. Now, the reason you want this is because in Cloud Rest, you do have a huge healing debuff, but I don't believe it affects health recovery. I'm almost positive, unless they've changed that recently. Health recovery is not affected, and so it's an extra 1,000 heal, which is actually significant in there because you have like an 80% healing debuff from being in Baneful during Execute. So that's why you'd want to wear this. All right, well, that is it for sets that I recommend you get if you are new. But I do want to mention that there are other things and other sets that you might want, and you definitely will want eventually, especially if you get into hard mode content, okay? So we're going to talk briefly about those. Now, the first step here is Elemental Catalyst, and this set I really like. If you keep this set procced, you can increase the DPS of your party by up to 15%. And it's not that hard to proc. The easiest way to do that, so it increases the DPS of the party by 5% for each kind of elemental damage being done to that target. So what you can do is if you have a Frost Staff, you lay down your wall, that's frost damage. Instead of a Crusher enchant, you put a Lightning enchant on it, and that's the second kind of damage. And then all you need is one more type of damage. You need fire damage. Those are the 3 types you can proc with this. And there's a couple ways to do this. If you're a Dragon Knight, it's very easy. You have several abilities that will apply a dot, and you really want a dot so that it keeps it up over time. And if you're a Necromancer, it's a little bit different situation and other classes, but just look for dots on your bar. If you're looking for a fire dot, the Mage's Guild skill line, the Fiery Ruin, if you have that unlocked, will work. And so you can use that. However, other classes, you can use different things. Again, I can't go through every single class and tell you what you need to proc this. So you will have to look. So for pretty much all of them, it is best to level the Mage's Guild skill line and to use Fiery Ruin for your fire damage if you don't have it. However, again, each class has its own thing, and I can't go through all of them. It would just make this video too long. So just take a look, read what your skills do, and look for dots. But Elemental Catalyst, if you don't have someone in your group already running it, it's a great thing to have. Another situation too where you can run Elemental Catalyst is, again, if you're in a trial and you've got 2 tanks, so you got one wearing Jaundican, Powerful Assault, and Saxolyl, and you don't really need that sustain stat, you can instead have one of your tanks wear Elemental Catalyst. And again, if you don't have it in your group, it's a 15% damage increase. It's huge. You know, it's don't leave home without it. So it's a great set. It is a light armor set, so you are going to want jewelry and weapons for it, and you do want to make sure you have it double barred, because otherwise your uptimes will be very bad. But if you have that, it's very easy to proc and very easy to keep the uptimes on. Now, Arcasis and Drake's Rush, these are fine in 4-mans. They don't really help the group's DPS as much as you might think. It's nice to get ultimate. If you're running in 4-mans and you're ulti dumping on bosses, they can be good, but nothing to write home about, honestly. Martial Knowledge. Now, this is a super try-hard set. You have to keep your stamina below 50%, and then your light attacks cause your enemy to take 8% more damage for 5 seconds. And this effect can occur once every 8 seconds, so there is a 3-second cooldown. This is a set that is often worn by Magicka DPS because they can keep their stamina low and it's not that big a deal, and they're always light attacking, so again, it's very easy for them to keep it up with. All they have to do is keep their stamina low. However, you could run this on a tank. It would probably be an off tank, and probably an off tank that's rocking double ice staves. And if they're going to be using double ice staves, they don't need stamina to block, and so they can use this for it. And then the other thing is they can also keep up brittle. A single target on brittle if you don't have a Magden or someone else in the group keeping up brittle. I don't recommend it. It's super try hard, but it is something you can do and might be the best for the group at some point in time. Now, Zen's Redress. Now, this is again a set that will usually be on a Zen's DK, but other classes can keep it up. It increases your damage by 1%. Up to 5. Again, this is even worse than Martial Knowledge as far as having a tank keep it up, because you need 5 dots on your bar. And that means you need to replace some tanking skills on your bar with dots. Now, your wall will do 1. You might have a couple of class skills, but again, keeping up all 5, you're really doing a DPS rotation at that point. And Master Architect. So Master Architect and War Machine are both primarily used either in like score pushing, really try hard stuff, or in VAS, Veteran Asylum Sanctorum, because Veteran Asylum Sanctorum is like the exception to all the rules. It's such a weird trial. Everybody is so spread out that you can't do what you would normally do in almost every other trial. And so a lot of people have figured out over time that there are other ways to get those same buffs and to do different things, but you really have to change up the group composition. People will be wearing weird stuff, and Master Architect and War Machine here just fall into that category. It's a way of keeping up Major Slayer for the group. One's a stam version, one's a mag version. So I just want you to know that they exist and that is a thing. Akavir Dragon Guard, again, this is a kind of a hard mode thing, a very try hard thing. It reduces the cost of your ultimate abilities. So if you're trying to ulti dump in between one ad pool and the next ad pool, this might be something you wear so that you can use a Colossus or Warhorn more often on ad pools. And then Gallimway. So this set I wanted it to be good for so long. The issue with this set is that you don't get attacked very often, and so the proc doesn't last long enough, and so the uptimes on it end up not being great. There is one notable exception, and there might be more, but the one I can think of off the top of my head is going to be Kyne's Aegis, because the boss attacks very frequently. It's like just over a second, I think, that they're attacking you. So they're constantly attacking you. So if you hold block with Aegis of Gallimway, you can keep this up. Now, if you have a Necromancer off tank, pretty much anything but a DPS, they can potentially keep up in power on your group. Again, in that one situation, especially if you're new, your group is going to be pretty spread out, most likely. And so you're not going to be able to keep it up on the group by using the Empowering Grasp that you would normally use, because it's kind of a line in front of you that's only so wide. So using it there, that's where you would use it in general, the best place for it. So Morag Tong. So this is a PvP set, not too hard to get. I think you could just purchase it from guild traders. And when you deal direct damage, you cause the enemy to take 10% more damage from poison and disease attacks for 5 seconds. So this is a set that you'll want to use in a stam group if you have all stam, to increase your poison and disease attack. I mean, you could use it with a mixed group as well, but it's going to be the most use in an all stam group. And then a couple of honorable mentions here. The Pearls of Elnofay, I think is how you say that. So whenever you cast a healing ability while in combat and your dominant resource is under 30%, you gain 5 ultimate. So this is another one of those sets that kind of like martial knowledge, where it could be potentially extremely hard to keep up. However, you can keep it up. There's a huge benefit, and so that's why I mention it here. This is used in groups to help. I mean, you can Colossus or Warhorn constantly if you have this up. So it might be something you put on your off tank and have them wear, and they could keep their stamina low while using dual frost staffs if their stamina was their highest resource. So it's the quote-unquote dominant one, and that's where you might use this at. There are potentially other situations, but that's just the one that comes to my mind. And Ring of the Wild Hunt. So this is really nice in between ad pools, just if you're trying for speed runs to run from point A to point B, and that's really the main place you're going to use it. You could potentially use it in other situations, but there are complications to that. So I'll just put it here. If you're in 4-mans and your group has plenty of DPS, if you're in a random normal and you're just trying to keep up with the group because they're just charging through everything, maybe this makes sense in that situation as well, and just lose a 5-piece set and it doesn't really matter. All right, guys. Well, that is it for this video. I hope you guys found this helpful. If you learned something from this video, or if you just thought it was helpful, please let me know by leaving a comment down below. That helps the algorithm know that, hey, this is decent content and, you know, we should promote it. And that's it for today. So I'll catch you in the next video, guys. Thanks for watching.